As a child growing up in the 1990s, I had two big passions in my life. One was Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, because they weren't ninjas in the UK, and Street Fighter 2. In 1993, video game developer Konami decided to combine these two elements to create their own Shell-themed beat-em-up titled Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles Tournament Fighters. I remember when I first read about this upcoming video game in a magazine that I lost my shit. The Turtles in a Street Fighter-like game? I needed this in my life. Fast forward perhaps a year later, and on my 9th birthday my parents took me to the Birmingham market, where they bought me Turtles Tournament Fighters on the Sega Mega Drive. It was one of the greatest video game experiences of my life, which you'd only understand if you knew how much of a turtle head I was. If you read my article on Turtles in Time, then you'd get it. About 11 years later, I was looking around eBay when I found Turtles Tournament Fighters on the Super Nintendo. Believe it or not, it took me that long to realise that I'd never had the chance to play this awesome video game on the Super Nintendo, the console that many touted as a superior 16-bit machine. Without a thought, I bought the Super Nintendo version and had as much of a blast playing that version as the Mega Drive version I was given 11 years prior. But after owning both versions, I could never help but wonder, which version is better? I've never thought about it hard enough until today, that is. Today, for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to review and compare both the Super Nintendo and Sega Mega Drive versions as a Rocket Vlog compares Turtles Tournament Fighters. Box presentation. Back in the day when you could only buy video games from a store and you had no internet reviews to find out how good a video game was, all you had to go by a lot of the time was how good the video game looked on the back of the box. A video game's box should be like a good shop window. It should be presented in such a way that it entices potential customers in to buy something. A video game box should be the same way. It should grab a person's eyeballs and overwhelm them with the urge to buy it immediately. So let's see how the two games' shop windows compare. The front of both boxes have the same kind of look, but it's worth noting that each version has a different turtle on the front. Raphael is on the Mega Drive box and Donatello's on the Super Nintendo box. This could sway somebody who had both machines depending on which turtle you like best. I know if I had both versions in front of me, that might have swayed me. It's also worth noting a version for the Nintendo Entertainment System was released too, and that Leonardo was on the front of that box. Poor Michelangelo never got to be a poster child for this game. The only other difference on the front of the box is that the Super Nintendo version has a silver colour and the slogan "No Street Fighter has ever seen fighters or fighting like this." You know what they were going for there. Flipping the boxes around to the back immediately shows a big difference in presentation. The Mega Drive version has 4 pictures of the gameplay down the left-hand side, as well as a small blurb to explain the game. The box is multilingual, so the majority of the box is taken up by the same description in different European languages. The Super Nintendo version has 1 picture more, making a total of 5, and much more text describing the video game. It's filled with catchy slogans, all of which are emboldened to draw you in right away to focus on them. They include "On these streets, you're just a piece of meat," and "For 1 or 2 street-hardened warriors," telling you in a fun way how many people can play the game. The Super Nintendo's blurb is not only catchy and filled with slogans, but it also goes into greater detail about what the game's about, details most of the characters, and even sells the moves that the fighters can do. There's no comparison here. The Mega Drive box makes me feel like it's saying, "Here's a Turtles game, why not play it?" While the Super Nintendo version is like, "Hey! Check out this totally radical game. It's all new 16 meg action. You can play as all these guys, and you can do ultimate attack moves. You've gotta play this game, man!" So, with that in mind, the winner for better box presentation has to go to the Super Nintendo. Storyline. A good video game needs a storyline to help justify why the events in the game are happening, and that goes for beat-em-ups too. Street Fighter 2 chronicled each fighter's motivation for being in the tournament, while Mortal Kombat depicted a tournament to determine the fate of the Earthrealm. Turtles Tournament Fighters has its own storyline too, though it varies a bit depending on which version you play. In the Sega Mega Drive version, Splinter is kidnapped by clones of the Turtles. The Turtles find this out when Krang takes over their TV set and explains that he's had Splinter kidnapped and taken to Dimension X. The only way for the Turtles to rescue him is to meet his turtle clones in battle in Dimension X, which Krang exclaims is really great. Not willing to take this shit, the Turtles plan to fight back, but they need some help first. Enter Sisyphus, a beetle who is a character original to the game, April O'Neil sporting a pseudo Sonya Blade look, Casey Jones, who everybody knows and loves, and Ray Phillip from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventure Comics. Together, our 8 heroes jet off to Dimension X to rescue Splinter from Krang's evil forces, which not only include the Turtle clones, but clones of the 4 previously mentioned allies and even Triceraton, one of the game's bosses. The Super Nintendo version has a more interesting setup for a storyline, depending what mode you choose to play. If you decide to play Tournament mode, a short video, presented by April as her classic cartoon self, tells you that you've entered the ultimate tournament in the galaxy to win more money than you know what to do with. The game's instruction booklet goes into greater detail about this, as each character's profile explains the motivation for entering the tournament to win the purse money. On the other hand, play the story mode and you get something else entirely. After selecting one of the 4 turtles, you head off on the search for April and Master Splinter, who have both been kidnapped. Between each fight, you watch the turtles cruise around in the classic turtle blimp, following the clues they've been given after beating the previous opponent. Beat everyone and you'll find all the clues to not only rescue April and Splinter, but find out who's responsible for the kidnappings. But I won't spoil that for you. While the Super Nintendo version story is explained, you don't get the full story unless you have the instruction booklet. Unless you're a collector and somebody who looks after all that paperwork, you might not have the book anymore. If that's the case, you might find yourself thinking that the story mode story is shallower than it is. The Sega Mega Drive version actually treats you to a small video that explains what's happened to Splinter and why you're having to travel to Dimension X in the first place. Not only that, but that one storyline defines the entire game, while the Super Nintendo version has 2 different stories depending on which mode you play. Because I feel it's a more compelling storyline, and it's the only one in the game, I feel the Sega Mega Drive version gets a nod here. To be honest, I'm a fan of Krang and the Wonders of Dimension X, so including that gets a big thumbs up from me. The Super Nintendo version has the turtles trekking across the United States looking for Splinter. That's a little less thrilling for me. Character rosters. Sometimes a game is only as good as the characters in it. Who wants to play the role of a character you don't like, right? Now obviously, because this is a Mutant Hero Turtles game, you can play as all 4 of your favourite heroes in a half shell, but the games differ from there, as each version has a different supporting cast of characters. The Super Nintendo version includes characters from the Archie TMNT comics, including War, a big purple monster, Armagon, a mutant shark, Asuka, the game's only original character, and Wingnut and Chrome Dome, both of whom were in the classic Turtles cartoon. Another interesting playable character is Shredder, or at least you think it's Shredder. A closer look at the instruction booklet reveals him to be Cyber Shredder. I don't really know if he's a robot clone of Shredder, or if it's Shredder and he decided to opt for the RoboCop treatment. Either way, Shredhead's in the game too. Your non-playable characters who act as the game's bosses include the Rat King, who you probably know from the old cartoon, and Mirage comic favourite Karai. Over on the Sega Mega Drive, the supporting cast of characters to the Turtles include the characters I mentioned earlier, Casey Jones, April, Sisyphus, and Ray Phillip. Along with the Turtles, those are all the playable characters. The non-playable characters in the game who you fight against are the Turtle clones, the Ally clones, and also Triceraton, Krang's android, and Karai. Both versions do include Turtle clones, even though their appearance in the SNES version isn't really explained. However, when you keep in mind that the Super Nintendo has 10 playable characters to the Mega Drive's 8, you're already getting a better deal on the SNES. Not only that, but the characters on the SNES appeals to me more. Shredder's a real hoot to play as if you get the chance. Granted, it's all down to personal taste as to which roster is better, since I figure many people would probably get more of a kick playing as Casey Jones. But for me, the Super Nintendo has a much more appealing roster. Sights and sounds. This is an interesting one. I'm not a technical expert, but considering both machines are 16-bit machines, it should be more than a one-sided fight. I guess we'll break it down with how the characters look, how the backgrounds look, and the soundtracks for each game. Let's start with the Super Nintendo again. Everybody on the Super Nintendo version has this softer, pastel-like colour going on, which is easy on the eyes. All the characters are well animated, and they all move smoothly. There's no animation glitches here. As for the backgrounds, I do enjoy this version's backgrounds a lot, as the majority of the stages feature cameos from characters from the Turtles universe, including the Neutrinos, the Foot Soldiers, and even the Mousers. Asuka's stage takes place at a Japanese temple, where there's a gentleman sitting atop a giant toad. I don't know what's going on there. My favourite stage from the game though is the nightclub slash concert venue named the Thunderdome. You've got like an 80s hair metal band in the background with a lead female singer going on. In typical hair metal fashion, there's an over-the-top backdrop for the concert that includes 2 dinosaurs with spiked leashes. That's just so cool. As far as the sounds go, the music's decent. Each stage has some music that sounds like it's appropriate for that stage. Asuka's stage has a very Japanese sound going on, for example. Konami also took advantage of the facilities to record speech into the game too, as each character announces their attack moves and says something quick following their victory at the end of the fight. Interestingly, all the turtles just say, "Let's kick shell!" It's pretty generic. Flipping over to the Mega Drive version, you can see a difference immediately. The colours of everything in the game opted out of the softer shades and instead go for a darker and sharper look. The characters themselves to me look bigger than their SNES counterparts. I can see more details on the turtles, but as I say that I realise that supporting characters don't look as impressive. April and Casey don't look as impressive as the turtles do. Sisyphus looks pretty good though. As for the backgrounds, I've got to say that I really dig the backgrounds here. Not only do I find them to have more detail in, but they're so over the top that it's cool to look at. Now granted, they don't really have animation in the backgrounds that the Super Nintendo version does, but they're so weird to look at. Leonardo's stage has some kind of weird alien thing going on in the background, and when you get to Triceraton's stage, you've got this dinosaur staring at you with a very vacant look in his eyes. I can dig it. I also really enjoy the sounds on the Mega Drive version too. The Mega Drive version of the game enables you to taunt with your character, where each character will punk out their opponent with a slogan. Leonardo will say, "Come on and fight," for example, while April cries, "Come on baby." But perhaps my favourite is Sisyphus. Have a listen. Punk. Did he just call me a punk? I find the background music in the Mega Drive version to be more memorable and catchy. I'm going to let you listen to a comparison for yourself. The Mega Drive version was lucky enough to score composer Miki Higashino and DJ Adasan, and if I screwed those names up, I apologise. But either way, that explains a lot as to why the Mega Drive seems to have a catchier, more enjoyable soundtrack. I actually listen to the music from Leonardo's stage when I go running because I find it that enjoyable and motivating to listen to. So, in terms of which game is more pleasing to my senses, I have to go for the Mega Drive version here. Although I have to note that after playing back the footage that I captured, the Mega Drive sound was in mono while the SNES was in stereo. Gameplay. This is the real meat and potatoes of the comparison. If a game isn't fun to actually play, then it doesn't matter how pretty it looks or which characters it's got in it, it's gonna fail. Let's talk about how both games play. A big difference right off the bat is how both the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive's controllers are different. As you probably know, the Super Nintendo has 6 different buttons that are used during gameplay, while the Mega Drive only has 3. Because of this, the Mega Drive version gives you a punch button, a kick button, and a taunt button, the taunt button being button C. In my experience, I didn't find that pressing a directional button and either punch, which is A, or kick, which is B, made for a stronger punch or kick like other Mega Drive beat-em-up games do. Kick always just seemed to make for a stronger attack. The Super Nintendo, with its 6 buttons, gives you the option of stronger punches and kicks, as well as weaker ones. X and A are your hard punch and kick respectively, while Y and B are your normal punch and kick buttons. In terms of executing special moves, both games employ the typical Street Fighter combos. If you know how to Hadouken, then you'll be able to do a special move here and there on these games. One thing I did find though was that most special moves are done by either holding the back button, then the forward button and pressing the punch or kick button, as well as holding down, then pressing up and hitting a punch or kick button. I guess somebody at Konami really liked Guile's button combos. Both games also enable you to set a handicap after you choose your player. If you want to make your character faster or stronger, it can be done here. So while much of the gameplay is similar in both versions, how do I pick a winner? Well, I'll tell you, it's the difference in the handling. While playing these games, I found the Mega Drive version to be like a car without power steering. It was harder to get certain responses out of it, and I really had to put some pressure on the pad to get it to do what I wanted at certain times. After I got a hang for it again, it became easy to play, but still it took a few rounds to find that groove and actually start to get somewhere with it. It has a very raw feel to it. I kind of felt after I started making the controller and character cooperate with me that I'd actually achieved something. On the other hand, going over to the Super Nintendo, I found the controls to be more intuitive. I didn't feel like I was in some way fighting with my character to get them to do what I wanted them to do. I guess the Super Nintendo is a car with power steering. It was an easier experience, and because of that I progressed through the Super Nintendo version easier than the Mega Drive version. Saying that though, I honestly feel that the Mega Drive version takes a bit more skill to play well than the Super Nintendo version does. The Mega Drive version feels like a feral beast that you need to smack into shape, while the Super Nintendo is like a dog that you bought that was already put through obedience school. Good boy. The bottom line. So, which version of the game is better, I hear you cry? Both have their strong points and faults. The SNES had better salesmanship and a more interesting cast of characters, while the Mega Drive had the bonus of taking place in Dimension X, as well as looking and sounding better. How do you choose? For me, it all came down to the gameplay, which is what I guess it should all be about. I think if I was to sit somebody down and ask them to play Turtles Tournament Fighters with me, I'd stick in the Super Nintendo version purely on the fact I feel my friend might have an easier time of it. While it's all well and good being all gung-ho and saying, "Master the harder version, you wuss," we all only have a certain amount of time on our hands, and I don't want to have to devote a lot of time mastering a video game. If I did, then the Rocket Hideout wouldn't get updated as nearly as much. I want something I can pick up and play for a while, play at a decent level, then put down again. Because of that, while the Mega Drive version has a lot going for it, I'd say if you're ever to make a choice, go for the Super Nintendo version. You might enjoy the experience just that little bit more. With that, happy gaming, and I'll be back on YouTube again real soon.